Have you thought about owning a house in Japan so that you can fulfill your dream of living in a landed property? And talking about investment, you may have heard of the high rental used for Japanese investment properties. Maybe you're also thinking of turning a cheap Japan property into an Airbnb to tap into Japan's booming tourism industry. So all this sounds like a dream, right? But there's a catch after I research into it. So please watch on. Hi everyone, SG Dad here. In today's video, we'll be talking about things to look out for if you are thinking of buying, renting, or investing in Japanese properties. Do you know that you could own a house in Japan for less than the price of a car in Singapore? In many parts of Japan, older houses can cost less than 50,000 Singapore dollars. So imagine owning a charming countryside home for a fraction of what you would pay for an HDB flat in Singapore. And I'm not just talking about very old places. Even in Tokyo, one of the most expensive cities in the world, you can find smaller apartments for under $100,000. So let me share and review a few examples from a property listings on this website. Okay, this is the website and I'm looking at Tokyo region. So all these dots are the available properties around. So maybe let's filter by showing properties that are 10 million and below. So if you choose 10 million over here, and all these blue dots, light blue dots, are the available properties, right? And you notice that there are also the only available properties are those 1R, 1K, and 1DK, those small units. So maybe let's click on some of them and take a look. So for example, this right over here, it costs 7.8 million, right? And this unit over here, yeah, so there are three different types of units around 7.7, 9 millions, and 9.5 million. So as you can see, even in Tokyo area, of course not in the city center, maybe slightly at the outskirts, there are very affordable and cheap units around. Now compare that to Singapore. A HDB flat in a non-mature estate area already costs more than $500,000 easily. The difference is really staggering. But there's a catch. The main issue is that houses in Japan depreciate in value. After 20 to 30 years, those landed houses that you dream of may become worthless. Unlike in Singapore, where properties tend to appreciate due to high demand and high interest from investors, in Japan, only the land retains its value rather than the house itself. This is why capital appreciation is very rare, and only in big cities like Tokyo, Osaka, or Fukuoka have seen property appreciation in the last few years. If you want to invest, then look at urban areas. It will be a better option, and they tend to hold their value better due to higher demand and economic activity. Next, let's talk about rental income and rental yield. If you look around or contact realtors in Japan, you'll find that rental yields for Japanese properties can be very attractive, like ranging from 4 to 8%. If you compare this to Singapore, where rental yields are much lower due to high capital costs of housing, some rental yields may not even cover the mortgage payment. But again, there's a catch. Japan's rental yield can be high, but there are various costs involved, such as taxes and maintenance costs, similar to maintenance fee in Singapore's condo. So after deducting these costs, it's still possible to achieve maybe a 3 to 5% yield, especially for those small units designed for singles and working professionals. But there's a major difference between Japan's rental market and Singapore's. The tenant protection laws in Japan are very strict. As a landlord, it's extremely difficult to evict tenants. Rental agreements generally favor the tenant. One surprising aspect of Japan's rental market is the strict regulations surrounding rent increases. In Japan, landlords cannot raise rent prices while a tenant is still living in the property. For example, if you sign a 2-year rental contract with a tenant, when the contract ends and it's time to renew, you cannot simply decide to increase the rent by another 10,000 yen. The tenant has a legal right to reject the rent increases, and in most cases, the rent remains unchanged unless both parties agree, which no tenant would willingly agree to rent increase. So this system is very different from rental markets in other countries, where landlords have more freedom and power to adjust rents based on market demand, inflation, or just personal discretion. Japan's regulation make the rental market much more stable and predictable for tenants, but this will also limit potential profitability for landlords. So this means that once a rental agreement is signed, the rental income remains fixed for as long as the tenant continues to occupy the property, sometimes for many years. This is one reason why many Japanese families prefer renting over buying. They can enjoy stable living costs without worrying about sudden rent hikes. So for investors, it's important to carefully evaluate this aspect when calculating potential returns on Japanese real estate investments. If you have a property in cities like Tokyo, Osaka, it's quite easy to find tenants because there are many working professionals and students. But in rural areas, it's much harder to find tenants. So if you're thinking of buying a house in rural area for a low price and renting it out, it may be quite challenging. Many people are drawn to the idea of buying a house in Japan and using it for Airbnb, as it seems like a good way to generate passive income given Japan's popularity with tourists. However, there are strict regulations under the Minpaku law. This law, implemented in 2018, it governs short-term rental operations. So that means you can't simply buy a property and just list it on Airbnb. First, you must apply for a license, and there are stringent requirements such as fire safety compliance, hygiene standards, and a system to handle guest complaints, check-in, check-out, all this. And additionally, short-term rental properties can only be rented out for a maximum of 180 days per year, and this will significantly limit the potential income. Only for special zone, you can rent it out for the full year. And if you're considering finding a small apartment, a small unit like 1 LDK or 1 DK in a building, it is even more challenging because many buildings or building management companies specifically state that no Airbnb is allowed in the building because other homeowners can vote to prohibit Airbnb rentals. So if you really want to do so, most probably you will have to find a ikodate. And one more thing is, because as a foreigner, you are not able to manage the operation in Japan, you will need to engage an Airbnb management company to help you handle the day-to-day operations, the cleaning, guest communications, etc. But they do charge a fee, and it can range from around 20 to 30% of your rental income. And even so, you have to ensure that the property is legally eligible for short-term rentals first before proceeding to engage them. In conclusion, is investing in Japanese property worth it? It depends on your goal. If you want an affordable holiday home or a stable rental income, then yes, there are opportunities. But if you're thinking about short-term rentals or getting a high rental yield, then it's definitely not as straightforward. And remember, unlike in Singapore, Japanese property seldom appreciates in value. So you should treat it more like a liability rather than an asset if you are not generating any rental income from it. And lastly, you must consider forex exchange risks. The Japanese yen has been depreciating in recent years, and if this trend continues, you may lose money due to currency fluctuations. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more insights on Japanese property and tips about moving to Japan. See you in the next video.